A very good morning to you. Give us a sense of what's happening in Gaborone this morning.
Good morning to you and our viewers. I must tell you, there's been a hive of excitement here in Gaborone as we heard BDP supporters driving past here, the CBD, making, a hell of a noise in their excitement following the announcement of Dr. Masisi, in fact, as the president-elect. We saw this announcement being made by the Chief Justice at the local BTV studios. It was a media frenzy, I must say. My colleague Itumeleng Khajane covered that together with our colleague Tumelo Khawubutlelwe. They went there and they got this, it was absolute jubilation after they got this. People were happy, but it must be a major blow for the opposition. The UDC, the AP, they didn't win any votes in their constituencies. They did not only lose out on the presidential race, but they will also not be members of parliament. This is going to be quite telling of the future politics of this country. We had anticipated that Mr. Masisi would be dealt a huge blow since the departure of Ian Khama from the BDP. We saw Ian Khama working very closely with many opposition parties, but it seems that Masisi's favor was maintained across Botswana. If you look at the map that we've been seeing in the local TV station, it is basically painted, Botswana is painted red, showing that Masisi had a very huge following, perhaps because of his policy reforms, perhaps as well because he lifted some bans on hunting. He's been able to, engage with the people here and find a way, for them to support him and lead him to presidency.
Have we heard anything from the Botswana Democratic Party in response to these events?
Unfortunately, we have not had an opportunity to speak to them in response to these events. We are hoping that today we're going to go 10 o'clock. There's going to be a SADC Commission press briefing where the observers from SADC will give us what they have analyzed regarding these elections. And we anticipate there that leaders of various political parties will also be in attendance and will then be able to engage with them. But I believe that for the BDP, this is one heck of a victory that can be measured to none other.
Sintleng, I don't know whether you can hear me, but I just want to find out. We know that the relations between the current President Masisi, and former President Khama is very frosty. Have you heard any word from Ian Khama? Do you think he will accept the outcome? And also, is there any possibility for the two to mend the relations?
When President Masisi was electing on Wednesday in his hometown in Moshopa, he made mention of, the relationship between him and former President Ian Khama. He has made it explicitly clear that he has tried to engage with Ian Khama to ensure that, in fact, before him and his brother departed from the BDP, he had sought find a resolution to their impasse. We have unfortunately not been able to engage Ian Khama, given the fact that we have been hot on the tail of other active opposition parties and their leaders. We understand that Ian Khama has also spoken to some members of the media, speaking about, how he is aligned now with the opposition. It is still waited to be seen how he will, in fact, react to Masisi's presidency.
I just want to, the other thorny issue, you would recall that because of this relation, there was a time where some South Africans were not allowed to go to Botswana, for example, under the leadership of Ian Khama.
Unfortunately, I've lost the feed. I can't hear anything.
All right, we'll continue that conversation with Sintle Ingli later on the show. But that's your latest in terms of events coming out of Botswana. The Botswana Democratic Party, yet again, victorious. And this has been the trend, really. They have been the ones who get to rule Botswana since 1966.
Yes, they are credited with the stability of that country. When you look at the countries in the SADC region, you have challenges everywhere. But Botswana has been very stable, or relative peace was prevailing in Botswana. And perhaps let's hope that after this election, the trend will continue where the country is very peaceful. But the other issue is whether President Masisi, as he announced earlier on during campaigns that he was going to allow some South Africans who were not allowed in Botswana. You'd recall that
we know that Julius Malema's block has been that one has been removed.
Yeah, so we'll see whether he'll be able to travel to Botswana. But also Prophet Bushiri, who was not allowed there, whether he will be traveling to Botswana. But the other thorny issue is that you know that Bridget Hadebe, the wife of former minister Jeff Hadebe, is also not allowed to travel to Botswana. She has to make special arrangements. Will the situation prevail?
We have a few minutes left. In a country of just more than 2 million people, what are the major challenges facing Botswana?
Well, I think it's poverty. Everywhere around the world, the main challenge facing the globe generally, it's poverty. It is for that reason, when you look at the SDGs, the one that deals with poverty, that's where the Secretary General of the UN is trying to hammer countries to ensure that they do their best to ensure that they deliver on that SDG. Because all over the world, the issue is poverty. Secondly, perhaps to improve the relations with international community, but also with South Africa, but to maintain relative peace in that country. So he will have to work hard to ensure that he's able to reach out to those who are contesting him, and there's peace in Botswana and investment can flourish in that country.
Well, there you have it. Long-time public servant and astute diplomat Mokgweetsi Masisi yet again coming out victorious in the Botswana election. Sophie, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Since we have you here and it's a Friday, just a wrap-up of international issues. What's happening in Zimbabwe, and can you give us a wrap-up of the Russia-Africa summit that took place in Sochi
You
this
know
week?
that the SADC community took a resolution to support Botswana in its quest to see sanctions lifted. You know that some people are saying it's not necessarily sanctions against the Zimbabweans, but rather targeted sanctions against individuals in Zimbabwe. But today we'll see SADC countries taking to the streets to support Botswana, Zimbabwe, calling for sanctions to be removed against Zimbabwe. And on the Russia matter, I think it went very well. We saw the president speaking to the SABC in terms of the outcome, and we will bring you that interview, and I think the viewers can really listen to the interview and make their minds. But I think it was a very successful meeting, the Africa-Russia meeting. We know we have the China one, we have the
TICAD with Japan,
and now UK in January. It looks like there's a scramble for Africa. So our leaders will have to be very, very vigilant to ensure that the outcomes thereof are in favor of citizens of this continent.
Does that say to South African citizens, especially small business entrepreneurs who are trying to break into the business space and contribute to the economy, does that say there's that much more avenue for you to start engaging in terms of business?
I think the Minister of Small Business must ensure that there's space for small business to participate in the outcomes of these kind of forums, to ensure that you stand your ground to say, in terms of my department, this is what I want. And I think there is an opportunity for small business to tap into this agreement and make sure that they benefit in terms of what has been agreed upon. And we know now, with Africa having signed this African Continental Free Trade Area, I think there is opportunity for small business on the continent in general to speak in one voice.
Sophie, thank you for talking to us this morning. Sophie Mokoena is the foreign editor here at the SABC.